Okay, what's going on, everybody? At the current moment in the Blue Lock manga, we find ourselves in the middle of the Bayern Munich versus PXG match. The final match of the NEL, the deciding factor for who will truly become the #1 across the entirety of Blue Lock. Not only are we seeing the culmination of the striker battle between Michael Kaiser as well as Isagi Yoichi, both vying for the spot of becoming Bayern Munich's ace, but on top of that, we're seeing the payoff of not only Isagi's development, but the development of his rival Atoshi Rin, both who have managed to devour everyone else in their way on the path towards each other to decide who is truly the #1 in all of Japan. And even though in recent chapters it looks like Rin's about to swing momentum in the favor of PXG, there is still some serious underlying problems with the team itself. Don't get me wrong, the French team is very, very strong. I mean, they've shown it up to this point. They're 4-0 for a reason. However, they have their weaknesses that I believe is going to lead to them losing to Bayern Munich, who on paper shouldn't be better than them, at least the current Bayern Munich and how they're playing right now, as everything is starting to evolve around Isagi Yoichi. Chemistry issues, problem with ideology, coaching issues, and honestly, anything that you can imagine. Today we are going to be covering the problem with PXG. Really quickly before I get into this, make sure you go check out the link down below in the description for the Discord. If you join that, you can stay up to date with anything Blue Lock related or just anything else I'm covering on the channel. Other than that, I guess comment down below what you think is the biggest issue with PXG right now before we actually get into what I believe the problems are. I kind of want to see what you guys are thinking before you hear what I have to say. And without further ado, you guys know the drill. Grab some snacks, fill those cups, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, so as far as the French team is concerned, I have narrowed it down to about 4 specific problems that I believe are the cause of why PXG is going to lose to Bayern Munich, or at least why they aren't as good of a team as Bayern Munich at the current moment. First things first, we have the striker issue. Currently, the team is reminiscent of Bayern Munich, and by this I mean that they have a pair of dueling strikers, both fighting tooth and nail for the spot at the top. Unlike Bayern Munich's dueling strikers, however, who are mirror images of one another, PXG is at the mercy of 2 polar opposite players. Shido Ryusei and Atoshi Rin, each in their own right, are generational talents on the pitch, yet when told to coexist, it's seemingly only a problem for all those involved. I've covered Rin vs Shido in depth on my channel. I'll put that up right here wherever you can see it in case you guys want to check that out. But it's clear to anyone who actually does read the manga that the 2 of them are the furthest thing from similar that you can possibly get. Not only have the 2 of them aligned themselves with their own set of teammates, but neither Rin nor Shido pay attention to one another, as they can't be bothered to worry about anything other than their own goal. Seemingly, this has managed to work up to this point, yielding a perfect record for the French squad, but in the midst of not only Isagi Yoichi's current awakening, but the revenge of Michael Kaiser, the fallen emperor who is looking to reclaim his throne, and not even just the 2 main strikers. We have a fallen hero in Kunigami Rensuke who's hell-bent on revenge, and an unholy arsenal of other egoists and sadists, all hyper-fixated on victory. When up against a roster like this, 2 conflicting playstyles are simply not enough to get the job done. And I mean, I understand it's been enough for both Isagi and Kaiser to get past their differences and beat every team up to this point, but it's a little bit different because at least up to now, Bayern Munich has been following one of their leads. There has been someone in charge of the entirety of the play, and the other is just poaching off the other's success. Whereas here, they're just saying, go fuck yourself, I'm going to score how I'm going to score, you just stay out of my way. And I mean, sure, Rin is the top-ranked Blue Locker right now. It's no secret that he is insanely good. The hat-trick against Munchen City, the brace versus the Ubers, and even his opener against Barca are all insanely impressive displays of skill. Sadly, though, that means little to nothing, as the level of foresight that's being displayed on the pitch right now, not only by Michael Kaiser, the new generation 11 striker, but Isagi Yoichi, who is currently awakening at a completely insane level that we haven't seen before. It seems to me like something is just right out of the reach of Atoshi Rin right now. Like I said, not only is Kaiser reaching his prime right now, but the current Isagi Yoichi, the hero of Blue Lock and the reigning king of Bayern Munich, is quite frankly the most dominating presence on the pitch at the current moment. In recent chapters, we seem to be approaching an equalizer at the hands of Atoshi Rin, but this would not be possible if it weren't for the overwhelming pressure being put on the current #1 by Bayern Munich's ace. And even if he manages to tie the match, surpassing his adversaries and showcasing his true dominance, his selfishness and inability to utilize every part of his team, that being Shido, properly will always be the thing that separates Rin and Isagi. Shido, on the other hand, is a completely different case altogether. And honestly, he isn't as much of a problem while simultaneously being the complete problem. What I mean by this is if Shido wasn't on PXG, then the team could be fully focused on Rin. They wouldn't have to worry about another contradicting striker, a contradicting insane opposing force who goes against something that they want to focus on, a playstyle that would be dominant for them, a playstyle that can lead them to the promised land, because you can't ignore such raw talent as Shido. If Shido wasn't around, they could conform strictly to the pairing of Charles and Rin, and that would be much better altogether for the French nationals. However, with this one wild card on the pitch, the entire landscape will remain unstable. I mean, it's no secret, this has been the case for Shido since he entered the story. And honestly, in this scenario, it makes sense as to why Shido was the first to evolve. From his intro in the second selection against Kunigami, his show-stopping substitution in the U20 match, and now his explosive opening goal alongside Charles Chevalier, it's clear to us that Shido Ryusei is an anomaly of the football world that nobody can truly solve. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Shido's abilities are in any way better than Rin's. I mean, you can say that about certain aspects of his game, but other aspects, Rin definitely takes the cake in my opinion. Again, you can think what you want about the specific types of their play, whatever you want, I do not care, but it's a damn fact that in terms of instincts on the pitch, there is few who can be held in higher regard than Shido Ryusei. He will always be good for the occasional super goal. I mean, he pulls that shit off every single time he's on the pitch. But truthfully, we may never find an answer as to how to stop Shido Ryusei. At the current moment, he is being held down by Kunigami Rensuke, and I think a lot of this just has to do with the fact that Kunigami is playing not just for the sake of his team, for the sake of victory and his own ego. He wants to defeat Shido specifically because he's the one who plunged him into darkness, into the wild card, who forced him to become this shell of himself, who forced him to destroy everything that he once was, the ideology that he got brought up with, in order to just survive the wild card. It was something so cruel, so punishing that it destroyed his mental to this extent. Regardless of this, he remains a loose cannon and he can be fired off at any moment. Not only is his playstyle unpredictable, but his compliance and compatibility with his teammates isn't always a guarantee. Hell, even his recent goal was a result of a world-class chemical reaction, and the two didn't even plan that from the jump. The reason I talk about them in such high regard is because their skill warrants such praise, but regardless of how good they are, their inability to coexist will always rule over their raw talent in the face of such difficult adversaries as the new Bastion Munich. And I guess this kind of segues perfectly into the second issue that I have, and it's the fact that PXG values talent over chemistry. Realistically, this is what the striker problem stems from, and it's kind of the main issue that I do have with the team, and the reason why they don't succeed as much as you think they should for having such star-studded players and a star-studded roster that they do have. But let me explain that for you. What this comes down to is a weakness with not only the strikers themselves, but the entirety of the team. Yeah, they have talented players like Charles, Toki, Kars, Haya, Zantetsu, and of course, Rin and Shido, who have proven just how capable of players they really are. However, while they may have some of the best roster talent possible across the NEL, there's little to no chemistry whatsoever, as seen with our strikers. In fact, it's been quite the opposite, and their master Loki's been forced to keep differing ideological strikers separate in order to simply preserve order on the pitch. Now that he's foregone some of the formalities and merged both playstyles, leading to complete chaos for not only his team but every other team on the play, the weaknesses of PXG are beginning to show through. Sure, they may have gone and selected the strongest group of individual talents in Blue Lock, but that doesn't seem to make them the best outright. Such is the case in Bastion Munich. However, unlike there, PXG has now selected one ideology to follow more than the other. And that weakness is a similar one that we saw within the real life counterpart PSG, a collective of some of the best raw talent in the world, yet they were truly unable to work together with one another, thus hindering their overall efficiency and therefore their success. And with that mentioned, I guess I should segue into the next issue, that being the fact that, again, there's too many stars. You may think to yourself that it's not a bad thing to have too many stars, and on paper it really shouldn't be. In practice, obtaining the strongest collective of players and training them to play alongside one another would seem like the smartest decision at face value. It not only reinforces your team's individual strength as you claim superiority in an overall player versus player test of might, however, in regards to PXG specifically, they suffer from an issue that plagues their real-life counterpart Paris Saint-Germain, or at least that plagued them back in the day, when they boasted the attacking trio of Neymar, Messi, and the rising star Kylian Mbappe, backed by some of the best midfield and defensive players money can buy, all around a seemingly all-star lineup, yet the production yielded does not tell the same story. Sure, some success was yielded, yet when measured against the insane level of talent the roster boasted, they should have seen much more success as well as dominance over time. And just like in real life, we now find ourselves in a similar situation in Blue Lock, where, as they are again, like I said, potentially the strongest soul collective in the entirety of the Neo-Egoist League as far as Blue Lock specific characters, Rin and Shido, two of, if not the best players throughout a majority of the story, Tokumitsu, a former second selection top 3 player, Karasu, the third ranked player going into the third selection, not to mention Nanase himself, who was a spark that allowed Isagi to grasp the next stage of his evolutions, and of course the almost new Gen 11 level youth prodigy, Charles Chevalier. Regardless of the level of talent, as we've been able to read week to week, it seems that they are really no match for Bastion Munich right now. Their team dynamic is crumbling before their very eyes. Not just one, but both of their strikers are basically in lockdown right now. Their star playmaker doesn't even seem to be bothered right now, and overall, they seem to be nothing nothing more than pawns, playthings for the dueling strikers of Bastion Munich, the true battle taking place on the pitch. Now, with those three problems out the way, we have one final one that I need to get into, and this is basically the biggest issue that I think the entire team suffers for most of all. And of course, I'm talking about Loki and the fact that he sucks as a coach. Now, it was clear to everybody that the problem isn't simply with the players, their abilities or lack thereof. And the one thing which I believe is the true source of all of PXG's related problems would stem from their coach, Julian Loki. The French youth superstar, said to possess the speed of gods, regardless of how good he may be, is nothing short of a god-awful coach. I mean, the only reason he seems to have a master spot is because he is simply that good and his raw talent carried him to this point in a league that prioritizes young and promising players overall. Be the best and the rest doesn't matter. That seems to be one of the main lessons Blue Lock tries to teach the reader, and one of the best places it's seen is in Loki. He lacks wisdom, experience, and honestly, he just doesn't want to coach. He admittedly doesn't even care about the outcome of the NEL, the growth of each Blue Locker, or even PXG's victory. Loki is there for nothing more than his own selfish gain. The production of a passer capable of catapulting him above the great Noel Noah, and his key to becoming the best player in the world. He cares about nothing more than the evolution of Charles Chevalier, and he'll admit that to anybody. And while it may make sense given that the naivete that comes with having such fame and admiration at such a young age, the ones who suffer in the end are going to be the players at PXG who simply thought that they could rely on their master and seemingly cannot. Okay, now, we've covered the real problems surrounding PXG. While the roster has a multitude of strengths, they seem to be riddled and growing with weaknesses in recent weeks, whether it be differences in ideologies, their individual egos clashing, and the team chemistry itself just being piss poor. No matter what you want to chalk the issues up to, mainly, it seems that there is some serious issues going on in France, and it's growing ever so slightly week to week. What lies in store for PXG, we don't know just yet. I mean, we can speculate all we want, but with Bastard's two-headed dragons working as destructively as they are and seemingly starting to actually synchronize with one another, as well as PXG's established order being upset by the imbalance in their lineup, and not to mention the overall negligence on the one entrusted to train them and make them ready for this battle, the signs aren't pointing to anything crazy, and sadly for the fans of PXG, you should try to not keep your hopes up.